thank you for watching the film. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a nice 96 minutes away in the Outer Hebrides. My name is Alastair. I am the director of the film, and I was just going to spend 10 or 15 minutes talking a little bit about how the film was made, and hopefully answer maybe some of the questions that you might have. Obviously, I would much prefer to be doing this in a cinema and live, but this is also an opportunity to share some experiences I had in making the film, and to offer up a few insights into how this film got made. There is a couple of other videos that are kind of conversation pieces between myself and with Magnus Kors, who is the researchers who led the research that underpinned the film around the Scottish and Gaelic language. So if you're interested in that, you can have a look at it. And also myself and Aidan O'Rourke, who is the composer, where we talk about the score and how that was made and the kind of the musical direction that Aidan took with the film. But I thought I would just talk a little bit about the origins of the project. And it's an interesting project. It's very much a creative documentary film. It's led by Sound Archive, which is unusual for documentary film. It's a bit of a conceptual creative project in how it started. It was a test of how far you could explore Sound Archive and how it was made. But it was always its origins are very much from the relationship and exploring the relationship of the Gaelic language and fishing in the Outer Hebrides, and that's where it started for me. And I was spending a lot of time in the Outer Hebrides doing research and looking at a film idea that we're exploring there, and realizing and understanding this implicit relationship between the sea and the fishing communities and the Gaelic language, but also understanding that it was a place that was really steeped in history, and the language itself has been spoken on the islands for over 1,000 years, and that is a remarkable context for any culture and language, and with it comes incredible oral history and incredible stories and songs and a wealth of history, and this archive in some ways represents the first moment that was captured on tape. Because the archive was, of course, captured by ethnographers and recorded by ethnographers in the 40s and 50s when sound recording first became portable. Because I think it's always surprising to people and a bit interesting that sound recording, was a bit behind camera recording in a way, and that the first portable sound recording units weren't really available until the 40s and 50s. And before then, it was the big trucks and these sort of things that they needed to record in. So when they were available, some amazing researchers went up to the islands, predominantly from the School of Scottish Studies, and began a vast recording project of capturing the stories that you heard. So there is a huge amount of stories, and the existence of the archive is the heart of this film, and that I was looking to explore this relationship between the past and the present in the islands, and finding out the archive existed gave me an idea on how to do that. And the question we asked ourselves very early on was, can you make a film? What would happen if you made a film that was just sound archive and just contemporary visuals? And how could that create this link that I was seeing in the present day, that I was seeing in the islands, and the vast history that was imbued within the landscape and the boats and the people themselves. And the language, of course, so that it all dates back. So that was the starting point, and that was 2 or 3 years ago. And from there, I sort of came up with the structure of a visual portrait of the islands that would focus on the fishing communities, and began filming regularly and making a lot of trips to the islands, and getting really generous support from the inshore fishermen, from the trawler fishermen, from the processing plants, the people and places you see in the film who are wonderful, and supporting the film and supporting me being up there, and taking me out in the boats and giving me the access that I needed to create this portrait of what is a really dynamic, interesting, different community across the islands. And we filmed in all the islands from Butter all the way up to the top of Lewis. And there is material also of Mingulay, which is the island at the very south that was abandoned in the early 20th century, and that is the island that's full of seals at the moment that you see in the film. And there is footage of St Kilda, which is the closing shot, the drone there at the end, both of which were abandoned and represent in some ways the past that was, and that was left behind by people as well. So it was important to have them in the film, and the creation of a portrait like this was quite ethnographic, quite anthropological in how it was made. I was very observational, but capturing the everyday nature of life there. Not to overly dramatize it, and not to just to really document things as well as I could, was what was at the heart of the visual and filming element. And all the while I was doing that, I was in Edinburgh doing a lot of research and a lot of listening to the archive, and trawling through what was up to sort of 30,000 clips of audio, and narrowing down the themes that we're looking at for the film, and the themes that were in the archive, and sort of creating big repositories of documents and notes and these things that you do in the research for a film or research in any project. And it was a fascinating process going through that, and doing those two elements side by side was sort of where they were communicating, not on the timeline but in my head, and we were starting to find these links. I was starting to find the links between the visual material and the archive as they boiled down. But at that point in the project, once you were looking at all this, we're starting to get 10, 20, 30 hours of archive together, that all needed to be translated and get into a state that we could work into an edit. And the translation of it alone was a wonderful, interesting project. It was led by a woman called Joan McKenzie, who was a translator and subtitler. And it is a subtitling process, which in itself is an extra layer of translation. Translation is one challenge. I think subtitling is sort of like translating poetry sometimes, where that you have very specific time constraints and spatial constraints, and it's a real challenge. So we're very fortunate to have a great team that supported Joan as well. And the language that you hear in the film is Scottish Gaelic, but it's also very diverse, and that how it's spoken about it is different to Lewis, and is different to Harris again, and any Gaelic speaker will tell you that. But it was especially evident when everything's recorded sort of 70 years ago. And so we were translating all this material, getting it together, and at that stage we brought in an editor called Colin Money, who was a wonderful film editor based in Scotland, and one of the top documentary and fiction editors, and we're really fortunate to have him involved. He had a personal connection with Gaelic World, and really interested in it. So that was great for the project, and him and I went through about sort of 16-week edit, I think, and worked through the material and started to find these links as we sat down in the editing suite to find the links between the visuals and the stories, and to try and pair them up. And we really created the film through the archive first, and then started to try and find the links, the obvious links that were there, but then also the not so obvious ones where there was messages and links that we could create within the editing of the visual material to bring out and tease out some of those stories, but also vice versa, and let the stories tease out the visuals. So it was a very interesting process, a very different way of making a film in some ways. It relied a lot of work in the edit as well, and it relied a lot on creativity and being inspired by the voices of the archive, and really let them lead us in a way, because the recording that was done, it was, there's a very specific way of telling stories, but it was also done in kitchens and on the side, just in people's living rooms. So there was all sorts of wonderful extracts and pieces that we could include to create a kind of oral portrait as well. And that's what we tried to do. And the main thing was also to give life to these voices, because they are still present in so many ways, and the stories and the oral history are present in the islands today, and present in the fishing community and everyone really up there, and especially in the language. And that was underpinning a lot of what we did, was to, we weren't looking to embalm any voices in the project. We were looking to bring them to life, and we hope we did that. And as the project moved forward, I got sent back out to film more. So when I mentioned 80% was film when we started editing, I then would get sent back up with the kind of list of things that we're going for. A lot of that was me getting sent back up in the middle of winter, because I was far too attracted to summertime before then. So that led to a few more freezing cold shoots on trawlers in the Minch. But at the same time, there's some of the most incredible moments, and we filming with the guys on the boats was a really fortunate, inspiring experience, just to see the incredible hard work they do, but also the amazing place that is the Outer Hebrides, and to be able to have the chance to sit on a boat in the middle of the Minch at 2 a.m. I was really fortunate. But you also see and understand the connection of and the knowledge that is there within the fishermen, that has been handed down through the language that the archive represents, but also today, you know, them sort of watching the gannets and fish, diving around, and the joy that they take in it is just as much an inspiration of that kind of traditional environmental knowledge that's they hold as well. So I think I was, on a personal level, it was a wonderful kind of journey for me. But yeah, that journey did take me back up in the middle of winter a few times, which, it's a very different place to be, but equally beautiful, just in a very different way. And then, we got to the rough cut stage of the film, and that was where the music came into play, and there's a much, more elaborate conversation with Aidan in another video here, and please watch that, because I think there's an interesting, interesting role that music played in this. It was always 1/3 of the project in some ways, where the visuals, the sound archive, and the music would communicate between them, and that was our way of creating the whole piece. So he came on board earlier than a normal score would. It was within the rough cut stage, and he brought so much to the project as an incredible musician, but also we were responding to his music as well during the editing, during the final editing, and that made for a fascinating way to make the film. And from there we had to finish the film during COVID. We were very fortunate, actually. We just finished filming when everything went into lockdown, and we were even more fortunate that we had planned to edit remotely just before everything got thrown in. So we were able to finish the film just over in 2020 and have it released today, or have it released at the Glasgow Film Festival, and then out with you today. And I suppose, as much as it was made for cinema, we're really happy for it to be out there and for you to be watching it in this context as well. But we do also hope it will be in the cinemas later in the year when that's possible, and we hope you come back and watch it there, because it's made for the big screen, the surround sound, all this experience. It's an immersive type of cinema, and we would like to think that it's definitely worthy of a couple of viewings, and you'll get a lot from it a second time as well. Thank you for watching. And if you are interested in finding out more, if you have more questions for me, then I'm always welcome. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Tongue Tied Films on Twitter. But the film itself is on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. It's all under Iorram Film. And please do, drop us a line and follow us and let us know what you thought of the film. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep an eye on what we're doing next. We have plans for hopefully to get into cinemas and to maybe even hopefully have some live events with it later in the year. So thank you very much. Check out the other videos if you're interested, and thank you to everyone who put this on and made this possible. Thanks.